Right, what's the first thing you see when you look at this? Ah, bravo. Yes. This is just to wake you up. This is the largest eruption in the human history of Piton de la Fournaise, which was announced as this small little box on the top left. And the rest of the page is, of course, about the week of the ladies and cheap things to buy, shoes for men, 2 weeks where you can be well dressed, and of course what occupies most of the waking and sleeping thoughts of the people on the reunion island, their sex lives. So that's just to show you where volcanology is placed within the psyche of most people, even if they're living on an island. And here is, this is not a kid's drawing, this is mine, okay? I drew this on my tablet, but it's my attempt to put a volcano environment within everything else that affects us. And I can't remember if I showed this in no. Good, phew. Anyway, I drew this where there's a new project in Clermont-Ferrand called the Eyesight, and they have a challenge in that which is all about volcanic risk, and they ask for ideas. So if you want to work in hazards, volcanic hazards, if you want to do anything that's useful, you need to understand all the rest. It's no good making a hazard study or even knowing what a pyroclastic density current is if no one else does and it doesn't help anybody. So the volcano environment, the volcano is not even erupting there, but there's a lot going on. It's all, most of the time volcanoes don't erupt, but they still do kill people, mostly because of what the people do. But it rains, so water flows through the volcano, you can get cyclones, disease, famine, and drought can be related to them. You can have landslides, I mentioned that for Gio, otherwise because he wanted me to do. Debris flows, you can have earthquakes, but you can have tsunamis related to it, all those things. You can also have good things coming out of volcanoes, like geothermal energy. Most of the metals that you have in your computers or iPhones and whatever like that come from volcanic activity in one way or another, or magmatic activity. There you are. So, if you want to do anything with volcanoes, you need to think about that environment. You need to think of education, how people and yourself can be educated about that environment, which takes us up to science. That's the little moon at the top. And most people's vision of scientists is that they are far removed from reality and have nothing concrete to say to anybody. If you read the newspapers, that's the idea that's generally given. And it's not necessarily wrong. On the other side, you have those politicians with their big noses, you know, fake news, anything, that's not new. Politicians have been lying probably since the Minoan eruption and before that. And the thing that really binds all that together is how we communicate, which is where you get back to 3D TLC, because virtual reality is not about getting into a little virtual world and forgetting about the rest, but using it in some way to communicate. No, I'm not like that. So, one way of communicating, don't try and read all that, just look at the top. Ometepe, which is the two volcanoes you see up there, as a possible global geopark. So these are the scientists. There's old Bill Rose and old Ben and young Lindsay proposing that a volcano, or an island in fact, be turned into a geopark. A geopark is a place that would make Eve very happy if we could do it here. You turn a place into a park where people can understand about the rocks, where the people who live with the rocks can use them in ways that are sustainable, and the tourists who come along can also be sustainable and can learn about it and have fun with rocks as well. So when I was a wee lad, I did my PhD thesis on this island in particular, Concepcion, and I did that lovely geological map down at the bottom right, which has been incorporated into the national geological maps in Nicaragua, but I felt that it wasn't really being used for anything. So we started a couple of years ago this idea where we would provide all the information and base material for the islanders to develop a geopark. So far, they've been asking us what use would it be for them to make money. And that's a very sensible response because they are living mostly in a subsistence environment, in a very poor country, which has rather a lot of political problems. So they need to think about themselves, first of all. But if we can provide them some basic tools, then what we said to them is, we give you this, you do what you can with it, and we'll help. And that's where we're going from there. So this sort of thing has to be done with the local people, which is why Evie is so important and good, because she's a local person. So let's get out of that. So that's the first bit of this talk. And just to go a bit, I just give you a very quick introduction to Nicaragua, and because we had another Erasmus European project. It wasn't Erasmus, it was Alpha, with America, Latin America. It was all done in Spanish this time, because that is the lingua franca there. And the idea was environmental risk in Central America, evaluation and prevention. And this made a book, so I wrote a chapter with my colleague from Ecuador, Daniel, on volcanism and seismicity. And this was all before drones and virtual reality and things like that. So it's very simple. This is just a map of Central America. This is for people in Central America, so they would know where most of these places are. And it's just giving them some context. But I'm just thinking to myself now that if I did this again, this is now 10 years on, I would do it in a completely different way. I'd do it online. I'd be flying in through the ocean. You could see the subduction zone, and we could have so much fun doing it. I don't need to do that. Go back. There we are. So we did simple things like this, but imagine if you animated a subduction zone now, you could really bring it to life. And the simple, very, very simple views of volcanoes that I did, we could also be much more lively. There's one point I'd like to make just in this one. You notice on the top right it says viento, wind. Wind is very important, and I think the first phase of the Minoan went one way because the wind was blowing from the north to the south. Maybe it was a cold spring day, and everybody was inside. But anyway, the wind, the atmosphere, the environment has an incredibly strong effect on volcanoes, as does seawater. You're talking about ones. Anyway, these are just very, very simple diagrams, which I would like to bring to life now, of very simple risks. And maybe later, over a beer or something, you could try and list all the hazards that you could possibly get from a volcano. These are just the ones related to eruption. You've seen a lot of them here. We haven't talked a lot about lava, so I'm going to show you a bit of lava in a bit, and to show you what that is like in dealing with risks. And when you're expecting it to be lava and it doesn't do that, some of the surprises. So volcanoes come in all different shapes and sizes. I was going to show you this little one, Cerro Negro, on the top right, but I found some other stuff that seemed more exciting. Santa Maria in Guatemala, that grey dome of Santiaguito is a completely different sort of beast than the one on the left. It's a dome, and its greatest hazard is probably from the wet season, from the mud flows, the lahars coming off that. But also in the wooded areas around, that's coffee groves. So people are working within 100 meters of the volcano, and they can get caught by a pyroclastic flow, something coming down hot at any time. So the risks are very real for them. And they have ways of being warned, like with smartphones. They get sent messages. So even the poor campesinos have smartphones, but it doesn't always help. There are some other volcanoes, some other areas. I just showed you this because we had a few questions about what a caldera collapse looked like. That lake E on the left is about 2 kilometers across. It's a baby compared with Santorini. Probably produced about 10 kilometers of pumice to make that. That's one sort of collapse. You collapse into the volcano. And as Martin, the creative scientist, very clearly told me, it's because it drops into the magma chamber below, which is about the same size, and he's dead right. So these holes are very useful because it tells you how big your chamber was when the eruption happened. And if you get any new activity, very often the same size is what you get. The other one on this one here, this is a radar image, so you're looking at a lake here. It could be the sea as far as you're concerned. This is another caldera. Here is a cone, and you can see this shape here. This sector of the volcano has slid out and produced a beautiful array of islands. It's a wonderful tourist place now. It would have also produced a tsunami. It pushed the lake out away from it. There was no eruption associated with this slide. It just slid out. And we know it affected people because we found bones on the avalanche. But they were not people who were killed by the avalanche, they were people who were dead already. They'd been dead and buried quite a long time in a graveyard, and the graveyard was picked up as part of the avalanche and transported for a few kilometers. People probably died from this, but we have no record. It was just before the Aztecs became a civilization about 1,500 years ago. Anyway, that I think is the end of that. That's just a quick overview of different areas and how we did it in the past. I might come back to that, but I want to move on if I can. And the only problem is that Jamie sent me the emails of the pictures, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get them. So while I'm just getting my email up, just have a little think between yourselves around your desks and try and list all the hazards you could think would occur on the red beach where you went to yesterday. So you've got like 3 minutes of homework. What are the hazards from the red beach? And how would you minimize the risk? And this is something which I should have told you from the start. Risk there's a simple formula for risk. It's hazard, which is the natural thing, like a block falling on your head or an earthquake, times vulnerability. A lot of you will know this already, but it's always worth reminding yourself. What is vulnerability? The inverse of that, you could say, is resilience. It's whatever makes you likely to suffer from that hazard. It could be an economic value, it could be a building like this, it could be that we give you a psychological crisis, you could lose some money from your pocket, it could cause down a breakdown in communication between us. So there's many things that go into vulnerability. And there's people who spend their whole life studying vulnerability of systems without even thinking of the hazard. There's even some social scientists who like to claim that the hazard is unimportant. Everything comes from the societal reactions. I think that's a bit daft, but even so. It's often in the case of a disaster, it's what we do as humans which causes the disaster. So think of the red beach, and if we don't get an image up, just draw it yourself. Think of the beach, think of the water, think of the cliff and the blocks falling off. And have you got one?
Yeah.
We're guessing. So go back in your mind. You don't really need it, because you saw it yesterday. Think of the music playing on at the same time. What would you do to make it safer? The fall that happened recently, the picture, there's little posts here, people, cliff, nail. Remember, you can do something to reduce the hazard, but you can also do something to reduce the vulnerability. Okay, you've got 1 minute to choose your thing, and then go round. Okay, I'm going to randomly choose these three here. Okay, Victor, Shalom, and Sandy, what's your one thing you do? Change the entrance. Where would you put it? The other side. Okay. Let's keep these ideas in head. Let's go next to, are you on your own, Gregory? Mm-hmm. What would you do?
Well, I try to put some net.
Okay.
Or fix it on the rocks.
No, one thing. One thing. Okay.
We wrote the same.
Okay, we've got net group here. Alex's group.
Close it off. Access it.
Okay. No vulnerability. No risk. That's the way. Okay.
Have the same like Alex.
Okay.
But accessibility through a different method, so possibly through a boat where you're not able to get off and actually be on the beach itself, but still visit the beach.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Molly's group.
We would just say give people more information about the hazard, so be able to understand.
Okay.
They're more scared of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. So we have yes. Half. Yes. Go ahead.
Payment for the access of the beach.
Payment. All right. So either you stop people coming completely, And that's the idea of an exclusion zone.
Say
Edie?
something. Did you notice something close to the Saint Nicholas, the small church? Did you notice two signs?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first sign was that. It was stated, paths, red bits 7 minutes, white bits 50 minutes, Kupiat, I don't remember the location, the name of the location, 25 minutes. So the municipality of Fira, unfortunately, they had two signs. The first one was a sign for the paths, say 7 minutes for the red bits, and then on the opposite side there was dangerous landslides, be careful, blah blah blah. So the first sign showed you, oh, there is a path there, so you can go and walk. And just on the back they say, oh, be careful, landslides, don't enter. I have it in my. I took a photo in my iPhone with my iPhone. Say, they are ridiculous, but they are doing. The first sign say, okay, there is a path, so you can walk, and just below, on that they say, no dangerous landslide, don't enter.
Okay.
Dissemination.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have, I'm trying to remember now, you'll have to help me. Don't go. Okay. And if you say don't go, then you need to close it off, make them not come. So put barbed wire, whatever. We have another idea which is slightly like that, but slightly different. You make them go round so they don't go over the landslide. That's quite a good idea. But they're still underneath.
Yes.
Right. And then you've got the netting group. Okay. All right. Where you cover that in a net, so the rocks won't fall on it. And there you have to enter into a whole sort of discussion about geotechnics. Is a net going to stop everything, or is it going to stop something? Excuse me, that's my computer. It needs a siesta every now and then. So that's okay, but it might create a whole other load of risks. And if Zana's idea of bringing people in by boat to look at it, that's quite a nice idea because they could see it if they were coming to see that from afar. But if it was all covered in wire, it would look so nice. So there's an aesthetic problem with that as well. And then there's this group here who said make them more intelligent. If you inform people more, the theory goes that people will behave more responsibly. It's not totally true. The more you know, it doesn't mean the more sensibly you act. A lot of people here drive cars, and the more experienced you are doesn't mean the safer driver you are. Things like that. The more you walk along the road, you know about the hazards. Sometimes the less you take care about things because you become blasé about it. But if you know about that as well, that can help you to counteract that effect. So if you know. One thing, when I was discussing this with Malcolm, I think it was, we realized that they put a sign there by the landslide, and they put posts. And that gives you a feeling that on one side you're safe, on one side you're not. This comes back to you. So you can't go in one area, well you can, because you can just walk in between the posts. But say they put wire there, and then you would be blocked off from one place to another. But when we were looking at it, we were thinking, we don't think it's safe on the lower part of the beach. The big block drops off. It might bounce over the person who's sunbathing right underneath the cliff, but then it might hit the person standing on the water's edge. So it might be safer, for example, to sunbathe under the cliff and stand at the water's edge, or vice versa. So there's no simple solution to this. Also, if you block off the area, then that person playing the violin, whatever it was, and selling the fruit are going to be out of jobs because no one's going to be coming. So you've got to think of that. So I would say that all elements are correct, but none is a solution. to all of that. And what you'd have to do is to spend a few hours sitting down and thinking about the system. What is going on here? What are the influences? What are the costs and the benefits of doing one thing? And then talk to the locals as well. The violin player, he's probably got an idea about it. The fruit seller, people at the other side, the people who are selling the postcards and the ice creams near the church, someone who's getting money for the car park, the tour operators. There's all sorts of people who are making money out of this. So closing it down for everybody is probably not a good idea. However, if something drops off and kills someone, especially if you've got signs like that, you can expect to be sued. And there is a disaster for the local council waiting to happen, because they put in some protection, as Evie said. It's a protection that doesn't really protect anybody and creates its own problems. So that's just to get your minds rolling, and as we go around and look at other things, we can. Now, I can't remember when I started, but I've got two other bits of this, and let's see if we can do those before I run out of time. That's my central presentation. Because I thought about this time you'll probably be falling to sleep, and it'd be nice to show you some explosions. So here's just a poster from my colleagues in Inter in Nicaragua, and they've got a little map up there, a Google Earth map, which shows you where Momotombo volcano is. It's up here. It's 1,258 meters high, which is really nice. And it's on the edge of this lake, Lake Managua, or Holotan. And its last violent eruption was in the year 1524. This was made before 2016. And its last eruption, known eruption, was 1905. And I forgot to put in pictures, but I've climbed it. I spent a lot of time in the crater, taking temperatures from funerals. I slept in there. It's a really nice place to sleep this late, but very nice. And you can cuddle into the warm scoria. And but we've had high fumarole temperatures there, up to 1,000 centigrade, which means that the magma is right below the surface, for about 20 years, and nothing has happened. And none of us ever expected it to erupt. And then one day, Marta from Inter sent me a message to say, it's smoking. And the next day, lava came out. So there was almost no warning. And it's quite important, because if you look down to the bottom, there's Momotombo Power Company. 40% of all of Nicaragua's energy comes from that. Nicaragua is one of only 2 countries who have not signed the COP21, the climate agreement. Syria is one because they're killing each other, and Nicaragua is one because they say it didn't go far enough. And they've been trying to become totally green energy, wind farms, geothermal power, and stuff like that. It doesn't stop them shooting each other in political strife. Anyway, so there's a big power station. There's the capital city just across the water. And just here, where this road is here, there is the capital, the old capital of Nicaragua, which was destroyed in 1606, or abandoned in 1606, due to having far too many earthquakes and eruptions. They got fed up, they moved the capital 50, 60 kilometers, right next to a place where a new volcano popped up 50 years later. So, well, they weren't to blame. And it's an incredibly beautiful touristic place. And many, many tourists climb to the top, and there are tour guides taking you to the top. So like at Red Beach, if you close the top off, you close off people's livelihood. And but we've been concerned about it for a long time. So these are some of the maps that I made way back in 1997, before I had a digital elevation model and stuff like that. I took the contour map, I did the contours, I traced where streams go, and I drew where the lavas were likely to go, because there was a seismic crisis going on at that moment. And then the top left, here, this is Diego Coppola from Torino, his fancy lava simulation thing, and it's showing where lavas are likely to go in the future. And you can see one of them going straight down south into the geothermal plant. It's only 2.5 kilometers from the crater. So what I was pleased is the thing that I did, just with drawing lines down, was quite faithfully reproduced by Diego's fancy modern stuff using a DEM. So what I did wasn't too bad. And what we're showing here is where he predicts the most likely place for a lava to go if we get a lava. And he did this just as the lava had begun to flow down the slope. And I think somewhere I have a map. Here we are. Yes?
How can you predict where the lava would go? Is it just how the previous structure where the lava is going to kind of contact is kind of shaped, or?
Great question. There, we're very lucky because the wind blows in one direction in Nicaragua, and in the last eruption in 1906, built up a high wall over one side where all the pyroclasts went, and left this nice lava channel. So if the lava came out again, we were 99% sure that it would go where it did go there. And there you see the lava flowing down, and it's copying almost exactly what Diego said it would do. So that's good news for the power plant, and it's good news for everybody. So there was a lot of media attention. We got a lot of our first pictures from the TV and newspapers, and that was very useful. Newspapers are very useful when you're in a crisis. Oops, we didn't expect that. We never expected this sort of eruption. This is a Volcanic eruption. There's no record on the volcano that we thought we'd ever seen this type of activity. So when that lava flow started waning, we thought, end of eruption. It's only lasted 3 days. That was very exciting. And then 2 days later, boom. Luckily, the summit had been closed off, and no one tried to go up. December I've got the dates here. Are they? No, I haven't got the date there. Sorry. It was December 2016. Sorry. And this is, now you'll realize why I got so into time lapse. This is time lapse from the Innoter webcam. One night we saw there was a whole load of glowing things. We didn't realize why until we saw that. So these were the first volcanic explosions that were picked up. The burning, the lights there were burning stuff in the forest. So blocks had been hurled 1.5 to 2 kilometers away from the summit, and what looked like quite a quiet volcano was not at all. You see there's a line going down the lava flow. That's a pyroclastic flow that had gone down there. So that was very interesting to see. This is the other webcam from Innoter. You can just about see Momotombo in the distance with a bit of a plume coming out. This is a couple of days later. 23rd of February, actually. A bit later. Boring day. Whoa! Did you see that? Big pyroclastic flow coming down and a big grey ash cloud. We can watch that again. So this just goes to show that you can do hazard maps and stuff like this, but there were no pyroclastic flows in the hazard maps for Momotombo. You didn't expect it.
Can you ever predict the time in which the volcano starts to show signs of
Well,
dropping to the end?
Momotombo here, the area had been very seismically active several years before. So this is the sort of activity that we did expect.
Ben,
Yeah.
maybe it's a question.
Oh, I'll come into it now. So this is the sort of activity we did expect, which is from a nearby volcanic site. This hardly can hurt anybody. It's just a bit of strombolian eruption, a little vent, and lava is being blown out by bubbles of gas. This is spectacular. The only reason you get hope from this was if you walk too close to it, and that would be your own fault. Sorry, Andy.
So, story American was showing that all the eruptions were from the central continent or something. So
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was a flat eruption,
Yes.
what would happen to the nearby?
To the nearby. Well, this is one thing we're wondering about, because Momotombo is now 1,200 meters high. It doesn't have any flank vents, but all the volcanoes which are higher than that in Nicaragua do. So I think it will sooner or later produce flank vents, because that magma is obviously having trouble getting out the top. And of course that changes the game already. If it's just lava flow, and that has happened at other volcanoes in Nicaragua, flank vent opens up, lava flow comes out, you may lose a few houses and whatever. Okay. But what happened down in Costa Rica in 1968 at Arenal, volcano had been dormant for several centuries, no one was expecting anything, and it exploded from the bottom of the volcano, and there was probably precursory signs of a bulge growing at the bottom as the magma came up. But it came out with a bang and killed several hundred people and destroyed the village. So it's one of the problems with volcanoes is these things that you don't expect. And that's always a problem. When you get into a crisis like the Santorini crisis 2 years ago, 2011, that's a year ago. So you've got an idea of what has happened in the past, but you don't really know what's going to happen. You don't have that luxury, which causes you a lot of stress, I should think. Were you stressed? Not sure. Okay. So that's a little bit about Momotombo. What I was going to ask you with the Red Beach was, comes into this as well. Again, while you're having a beer or a glass of wine, we can come to this over the week. Think about what could be useful in virtual reality to help with these sorts of things. Dealing with the unknown, dealing with communicating, dealing with things that happen very, very rapidly changing situations. Is there anything you could do on the Red Beach to make people more aware? That's one thing. And what I just want to show you here is virtual reality is not just flying drones and making 3D visions of that. For me, virtual reality has many, many layers, and I think you can use it in many different ways. So here is another example. This is Mount Shasta in California and Oregon, right on the border. Oregon's just up there, and this is the 10-meter digital elevation model of the United States, thanks to the USGS. Open data, relatively free, and here's the volcano, and there are mapped faults going through it. And we were interested in this area coming up here, which is an anomaly area here, which is an enormous landslide that came out from Shasta quite a long time ago and filled up all of this basin, and the scale is behind me. But you can see it travels for a long, long way. And the other good thing about the United States is that they fly planes around to take LiDAR, and you could just ask them to fly a place. They write a little proposal, 1 or 2 pages, and if they're flying there and they think it's good, they'll do it. And the only condition is that that is open data. So anybody can use that data. You have a couple of weeks to look at it, and then it's up on the website. So we said with Riccardo Tortini, Michigan Tech, let's fly a line down the avalanche so we can look at the hummocks, the mounds on the avalanche, because we thought that would be interesting. So, this is the LiDAR here, and we can see our hummocks and things, they're very nice. And what we saw at the same time was this line running through there. And the moment I saw that, I thought, oh, they made a mistake in the data. And then we looked at it, and it's not a mistake. It's a fault, a tectonic fault running through the avalanche. And this is very interesting because there are no faults mapped in the avalanche. And why? Because each of these lumps here is separated by faults. As the avalanche slid out, each block that's separated made lots of faults. So you can't see faults there because there are so many. It's like looking for a tree in the woods. We found this fault quite by chance. And here are 3 virtual reality representations. We did this a couple of years ago, but you can now fly around this. So the one on the left is the raw data. And I've got a couple of cross sections through there. The other one is a slope map. It's a way of looking at the terrain which gives you another view. So red is steep, green is flat. It helps you pick out the fault in the morphology. And then I've abstracted that into a morphological map which goes through the area. So this is a great way of being in your virtual reality, because if you go and look in the field, there's the fault. Can you see it? No, it's on the left with those trees and stuff. There's one outcrop, which now we've got the LiDAR. It's obviously a fault scar, but we didn't know until we were there. So the LiDAR is especially useful. Flying a drone here would be less useful because of all the trees. And this just shows some of the profiles we took, and we were able to guesstimate where the fault line would be. We can't go all the way, and we could go a little bit further if we were able to dig a trench through. This is reality. We'd hopefully be able to see that fault. So it's good to try and combine all those things. And the offshoot of that, this is the LiDAR that we drew, but with that information, we were able to pick out on the more coarse DEM various other sites, here, here, and here, which are likely to be faults as well. And it shows that Shasta volcano itself, this is the fault we drew in. There's a wonderful area in the United States called the Walker Lane, which is this area here, which goes into the Cascade volcanoes, makes these little fault zones here. We've been now able to shift that over to show that Shasta is actually sitting on one of these. A bit like Santorini in that fault you saw yesterday. So, what's the use of showing you that? Well, basically, I wanted you to get thinking about how you could use different types of virtual reality, different layers, combine them together to be used with volcanic hazard. And I'm sure you've got lots of good ideas. So over the next few days, let's see if you can think these up, and if you can come back to me, and we can discuss that and see if we can make a list of those. My job is to collate your brainwaves into a little list, an account of what we could possibly do. So I'm sort of crowdsourcing, brain sourcing, parallel computing.